Lost Legends, the Fortress of Cisnădioara. Welcome to another Travel Edu Stories video about the Cisnădie fortress in Sibiu, Romania. In the following minutes, you will be immersed in the history of this place and will want to plan your next visit to these places. So let's dive in. The story of Cisnădie does not begin with walls, but with a summons. In the 12th century, the Hungarian king Géza II invited settlers from the Rhine and Moselle regions to protect the southern frontiers of his kingdom. These people, who would become the Transylvanian Saxons, brought with them a specific dream: to build a community that could endure the harshest trials of the medieval world. In the center of the settlement of Heltau, known to us today as Cisnădie, they began work on a spiritual heart. Around the year 1180, the first stones were laid for a Romanesque basilica. Dedicated to Saint Walpurga, the church was originally a classic triple-nave structure. At this stage, it was a place of peace. The arches were rounded, the walls were thick but not yet defensive, and the windows were small to keep the interior cool in summer and warm in winter. But the history of Transylvania is a history of fire. In 1241, the Mongol invasion swept through the region like a Sith. Cisnădie was ravaged. The original church stood, but the settlement around it lay in ruins. This was the turning point. The community realized that for their faith to survive, their church had to become a fortress. Fast forward to the late 15th century. The Ottoman Empire was expanding northward, and the threat of invasion was no longer a possibility, it was inevitable. Between 1493 and 1515, the people of Cisnădie undertook one of the most ambitious construction projects in the region. They didn't just add a wall, they redesigned the church into a military bastion. The side naves were raised to match the height of the central nave, creating a whole church. This allowed for a massive, continuous roof that could be used for surveillance. The small Romanesque windows were replaced with soaring Gothic pointed arches, but these windows were placed high up, out of reach of anyone on the ground. The most striking change was the reinforcement of the choir and the naves with defensive levels. Looking at the exterior today, you can see where the stone transitions from the 12th century Romanesque base to the 15th century Gothic fortifications. This was the moment Saint Walpurga shed its skin as a simple parish church and donned the armor of a citadel. Now, let us walk through the defensive layers. Cisnădie is a word renowned amongst historians for its triple ring of fortifications. Most Saxon churches have one wall, some have two. Cisnădie had three. The outer wall. The first line of defense was the outermost wall, which served to slow down cavalry and initial infantry charges. Beyond this wall was a deep, water-filled moat. This was a critical engineering feat. By diverting local streams, the Saxons ensured that any siege engine, like a ram or a belfire tower, would get bogged down in the mud long before it reached the gates. The middle and inner walls. As we move inward, the walls become higher and thicker. Between these walls were the zwingers. These narrow strips of land were intentional traps. If an enemy breached the outer wall, they would find themselves funneled into these corridors. They couldn't move left or right, and from the walls above, defenders would rain down arrows, boiling oil, and stones. It was a killing zone by design. The towers. The walls were punctuated by several massive towers. Each was a self-contained fortress. To the north, south, and west, gate towers stood guard. These towers were equipped with portcullises, heavy iron grates that could be dropped in a split second, and thick oak doors reinforced with iron bands. A fortress is only as strong as the people who man it. In Cisnădie, the defense was a civic duty managed by the guilds. This town was the center of Transylvania's textile industry, famous for its high-quality wool Heltau cloth. Each guild was assigned a specific tower or section of the wall to defend. The Weaver's Tower was the most prominent. The guilds didn't just fight, they funded the maintenance of the walls. When you look at the masonry, you are looking at the wealth of the weavers and the blacksmiths. Survival inside a besieged church required food. Built directly into the inner side of the fortification walls were small, numbered wooden or stone chambers. These were the bacon towers. Every family in the community had a designated locker here. In times of peace, the thick stone walls provided a cool, consistent temperature, perfect for storing grain, flour, and slabs of smoked bacon, speck. In times of war, the community would retreat inside the walls with their supplies. This meant that an invading army couldn't starve them out. As long as the wells inside the courtyard held water and the bacon towers were full, Cisnădie was invincible. Dominating the entire complex is the Great Bell Tower. Standing at the western end of the church, it served as the ultimate lookout point. From the top, sentinels could see all the way to Sibiu and the mountain passes, watching for the dust clouds that signaled an approaching army. However, the tower's height made it a victim of its own success. Throughout the 1600s and 1700s, it was repeatedly struck by lightning. Fires were common, often melting the bells and threatening the collapse of roof on the nave. In 1795, the town took a step that put it on a global map of scientific history. Having heard of the experiments of Benjamin Franklin, the local authorities decided to install a lightning rod. It was the first of its kind in Transylvania and the first in all of southern Eastern Europe. If you look at the top of the tower today, you are seeing a monument in the moment when the Middle Ages met the Age of Enlightenment. It was a blend of faith in God and faith in science, ensuring that the church would no longer be consumed by fire from the heavens. By the year 1500, the church was no longer just relying on stones and arrows. Verified historical records indicate that the town council invested heavily in modern artillery. The church was equipped with bombards, primitive but powerful cannons, and hook guns. These were early firearms that had a hook on the bottom of the barrel. A defender would hook the gun onto the stone ledge of the wall, which would absorb the massive recoil when the weapon was fired. If you take a closer look to the tower loopholes, you will see that they are narrow on the outside but flare out widely on the inside. This allowed the soldier to swing his weapon in a wide arc, covering a large area of the ground below, while leaving only a tiny target for enemy archers. These were the high-tech defense systems of the 16th century. When we finally pass through the heavy doors and enter the sanctuary, the transition is jarring. You leave behind a world of war and enter a world of profound beauty. The centerpiece of the church is a winged altar, a masterpiece of late Gothic art from the early 16th century. It features beautifully painted panels and intricate wood carvings. What makes it special is its survival. During the Reformation, many Saxon communities moved from Catholicism to Lutheranism. In many parts of Europe, this led to iconoclasm, the destruction of religious art. But in Cisnădie, the people valued their heritage. They kept the altar, simply changing the liturgy to perform in front of it. Near the altar stands a bronze baptismal font. Cast in the Middle Ages, it has been the site of thousands of baptisms over hundreds of years. It represents the continuity of the Saxon people, A chain of life that remained unbroken despite the sieges happening just 30 feet away on the other side of the walls. As we walk back out through the triple rings of stone, we have to ask, what does this place mean today? Cisnădie's fortress is no longer defending against the Ottoman Empire or Mongol raiders. Today, its battle is against time. It stands as one of the best preserved examples of Saxon defensive architecture in the world, although it could definitely benefit from more visitors, so better marketing would help. Cisnădie Fortress tells the story of the Weaver warriors, men who spent their days at the loom and their nights on the battlements. It is a testament to a community that didn't just build a church, but an ecosystem of survival. When you touch these walls, you aren't just touching stone. You are touching 800 years of grit, innovation, and an unyielding will to endure. The fortified church of St. Walpurga remains the heart of Cisnădie. It is a monument where Romanesque history, Gothic ambition, and Enlightenment science meet. It is a place where every murder hole and every bacon tower tells a story of the people who refuse to be moved. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive walkthrough of this Transylvanian titan. If you want to explore more of the world's most incredible hidden strongholds, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. See you in the next video.